Picture the most famous scene in cinematic history. I mean, you probably already know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I have a feeling I do.
Right. So the setting is this precarious weather vane, and it's hanging over this massive bottomless wind tunnel in Cloud City.
A classic.
Exactly. And the protagonist, he's battered, he's bruised, he's missing a hand, and he's clinging to a metal antenna.
Just holding on for dear life.
Right. And then the towering, black-clad villain reaches out his gloved hand. You can hear the mechanical breathing.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear James Earl Jones with that booming, resonant voice over the rushing wind. And he says the line, Luke, I am your father.
Yep.
You can hear the exact inflection, can't you? Like, you know exactly how it sounds.
Everyone does. It's totally iconic.
Except your brain is actively lying to you.
Completely fabricating it.
Yeah. If you pull up the original, unaltered footage of The Empire Strikes Back, Darth Vader never utters the name Luke in that scene.
Not once.
The actual line, like the only line that was ever recorded and printed on film is, "No, I am your father."
Which just sounds wrong when you say it out loud.
It really does. And welcome to this deep dive. We are so glad you are here with us. We know you, the listener, are a learner. You're someone who loves gaining knowledge quickly. You crave those aha moments, and you want to understand these wild perspectives without drowning in information overload.
That's what we're here for.
Exactly. Today, we are tearing apart a phenomenon that feels like a glitch in the Matrix, but is actually a terrifyingly common glitch in our own neurology.
It really is terrifying once you look at the data.
Right. So we are looking at a huge stack of incredibly revealing sources today. We have medical analyses from the Cleveland Clinic and Medical News Today, and those break down the clinical definitions of how our memory just misfires.
Very dense, but very illuminating stuff.
Yeah, and speaking of dense, we also have this fascinating cognitive science paper published in Topics in Cognitive Science. It maps out the social transmission of memory.
How we literally pass false memories to each other.
Exactly. And we're supplementing all that heavy science with pop culture analyses from places like Scream Rant and Slash Film, plus a really great student analysis from the Western Howl.
And we can't forget the Reddit timeline.
Oh, man, yes. An obsessively detailed Reddit timeline that literally documents the real-time birth of an internet legend. We'll get to that later, and it is wild.
It's my favorite part of the whole stack.
So the mission today is to unpack the Mandela Effect, but we are not going to just sit here and list off quirky trivia so you can feel a brief moment of nostalgia.
No, that's not the goal here at all.
Right. The goal of this deep dive is to tear the hood off the human brain and look at the engine. We want to deeply understand the exact cognitive, linguistic, and social mechanics that cause human beings and sometimes entire societies to literally rewrite reality.
Because the realization that your own internal hard drive is corrupt is, well, it's deeply unsettling.
Unsettling is putting it mildly.
Right, because we operate on this fundamental assumption that our memories are a secure foundation.
A bedrock.
Exactly. So when you challenge that, you aren't just challenging a piece of trivia about a movie quote.
Yeah.
You are challenging a person's entire method of interacting with reality.
So to understand the sheer scale of this cognitive dissonance, we have to look at the origin of the term itself. Let's set the stage here.
Take us back.
The year is 2009. A paranormal researcher named Fiona Broom is having a conversation at a conference, and she just casually mentions the tragic death of the former South African president, Nelson Mandela.
Just a normal conversation.
Yeah, and she talks about how vividly she remembers him dying in prison in the 1980s.
She can picture the whole thing.
Right. She can picture the international news coverage. Yeah. She remembers the sorrowful speeches, the riots, the global mourning. She even remembers a heartfelt televised eulogy given by his widow, Winnie Mandela.
But the dissonance hits you like a truck when you look at the historical record.
Because it didn't happen.
It completely didn't happen.
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela did not die in a South African prison in the 1980s. He survived a grueling 27-year incarceration. He was triumphantly released in 1990.
Won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, won the Nobel Peace Prize, became the very first democratically elected president of South Africa, serving from 1994 to 1999.
And he ultimately passed away from a respiratory infection in 2013.
Exactly. He was a globally visible statesman for decades after Broom's brain insisted he had died.
I mean, I try to imagine being in her shoes in that moment.
It would be incredibly disorienting.
You're sitting there realizing that a rich, multisensory, emotionally resonant memory that you have held for decades is completely fictitious.
But the story doesn't end with her just being embarrassed about a bad memory, right?
No. When Broom takes to the internet to talk about this bizarre lapse in her historical knowledge, she discovers a massive community of people who share her exact hallucination.
That's the part that breaks my brain.
Hundreds of thousands of strangers across different continents, different demographics, different age groups, they all possess the exact same highly specific, deeply detailed false memory of the 1980s funeral.
So she coins the term the Mandela Effect to describe this collective misremembering.
And suddenly, the internet realizes this phenomenon is literally everywhere.
It forces us to confront a terrifying question, really.
What's that?
Well, if an entire population can conjure a detailed memory of an international funeral that never happened, what else are we universally fabricating?
Oh, wow.
And it turns out our shared cultural touchstones are littered with these cognitive fabrications.
Which brings us to the visual glitches. I mean, I spent an hour looking at old board games trying to prove this to myself.
Their work?
No, the failure of my own memory was visceral.
Let's do some of those aha examples so the listener can feel it too.
Okay, picture the Monopoly man. Rich Uncle Pennybags. He is the quintessential 19th century capitalist.
Right, he's got the top hat.
The morning coat, the cane, and perched over his eye is a monocle, right? I can literally see the glint of the glass in my mind's eye.
Except he doesn't have a monocle.
Never had one.
He has never, in the entire history of the Parker Brothers game, worn a monocle.
It's crazy. Okay, let's try another one. The Fruit of the Loom logo printed on the tag of millions of white T-shirts.
Oh, this one gets people really heated.
It does. The image is a pile of fruit grapes, an apple, some leaves, and all of that fruit is tumbling out of a woven brown wicker cornucopia.
The horn of plenty.
Yeah, you can see the spiral of the horn.
But the cornucopia is a phantom.
A total phantom.
It has always been just a cluster of fruit on a plain white background. There's never been a basket or a horn of any kind in the official trademarked logo.
See, my brain physically recoils at that information. I feel like I am being gaslit by a T-shirt company.
It's a very common reaction.
Okay, what about Pikachu? The mascot of the multi-billion-dollar Pokemon franchise.
Everyone knows Pikachu.
Right. He is bright yellow with a jagged lightning bolt-shaped tail, and the very tip of that tail is painted black.
The tail is entirely yellow.
No black tip at all.
None. There is a small patch of brown at the very base near his body, but the tip has never been black.
It is genuinely uncomfortable to hear the facts. Let's do Mickey Mouse, the icon of Disney.
Okay.
He wears the oversized yellow shoes, the white gloves, and those bright red shorts with the 2 prominent white buttons. And he wears red suspenders to hold those shorts up.
No suspenders. Just the shorts.
Just the shorts. Even our spelling and famous movie quotes are heavily infected by this.
Oh, the spelling ones are fascinating.
Like the classic Warner Brothers animation block featuring Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. It's Looney Tunes, spelled T-O-O-N-S because they are cartoons.
The official trademark is Looney Tunes, spelled T-U-N-E-S.
Insane. Okay, the modern Stone Age family from Bedrock, the Flintstones. F-L-I-N-S-T-O-N-E-S.
You are dropping a consonant there.
Am I?
Yes, it is the Flintstones, with a T in the middle. F-L-I-N-T-S-T-O-N-E-S. Because of Flint, the rock.
See, that makes logical sense, but my brain rejects it. Okay, the peanut butter brand. The one you use to make a sandwich in a Jiffy.
Jiffy peanut butter.
It has been Jif since it was introduced in 1958. Just J-I-F. Wow. And returning to the movies real quick. The evil queen in Disney's Snow White staring into her looking glass. The most famous mirror incantation in folklore. Mirror, mirror on the wall.
In the actual 1937 film, the dialogue is, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?"
Magic mirror, not mirror, mirror.
Exactly. Magic mirror.
I want to focus on the unease that comes with hearing those corrections, because out of all these examples we just listed, there is one that caused such a massive meltdown on the early internet that it became the defining case study for this phenomenon.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I am talking, of course, about the bears.
The bears are the perfect gateway into the actual cognitive mechanics of this illusion.
Yes, please explain this to me.
Well, we are talking about the beloved children's book series featuring Mama, Papa, brother, and sister bear living in a treehouse.
Everyone knows them.
Right. Millions of adults vividly remember learning to read with the Berenstain Bears, spelled with an E-I-N at the end.
It is completely etched into the nostalgia of an entire generation.
But when those same adults went into their parents' attics and pulled those physical, decaying books out of cardboard boxes, they were confronted with a spelling that felt alien.
The Berenstain Bears. A-I-N.
Exactly, A-I-N.
And the reaction wasn't just, oh, I misread that as a
Oh, it
key.
was much more intense than that.
The reaction was reality has shifted. There were massive, sprawling forum threads where people genuinely argued that the physical books had mysteriously transformed.
The hostility toward the AIN spelling is fascinating because it highlights a fundamental rule of how our brains process language.
How so?
Well, the franchise was created in 1962 by a husband and wife illustration team, Stan and Jan Berenstain.
Okay.
The AIN spelling was simply their legal surname. But when their son, Mike Berenstain, eventually took over the series, he gave an interview addressing this mass hysteria.
What did he say?
He revealed a crucial piece of historical context. He said this wasn't an internet age glitch. This exact spelling confusion plagued his father, Stan, when Stan was a child in elementary school.
That is the detail that completely rewired my understanding of this, because it wasn't the internet that broke the spelling.
Exactly the opposite. Stan Berenstain's own elementary school teacher repeatedly tried to force him to spell his name Berenstain with an E-I-N.
But why? Why would a teacher do that?
Because the brain is a prediction engine that relies on statistical probabilities.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Think about the cultural lexicon of Ashkenazi, Jewish, and German surnames in America. The suffix "stein," like Einstein, Frankenstein, or Goldstein, is incredibly common.
Very common, yeah.
But the suffix "stain," pronounced as a literal blemish or mark, is incredibly rare and linguistically jarring in that context.
Okay, let's unpack this. So the teacher's brain was rejecting the statistical anomaly.
Yes. The teacher's brain encountered the visual input of stain, checked it against its internal database of common name structures, flagged it as an error, and silently autocorrected it to Stein before the conscious mind even processed it.
Just silently fixed in the background.
Exactly. Now multiply that teacher's cognitive autocorrect by millions of children in the 1980s and 90s.
Oh, wow.
Those kids were vaguely glancing at a cursive font on a book cover. And at the same time, there were knockoff books and merchandise that sometimes used the wrong spelling, too.
Plus the cartoon. The animated television adaptations of the books featured voice actors pronouncing the name with a soft vowel sound that sounded much closer to Steen or Steen.
Right, you have a visual anomaly, an ambiguous auditory input, and a strong cultural heuristic. The brain simply rewrites the memory to make it fit the expected pattern.
See, when I look at the medical articles from the Cleveland Clinic that we pulled for this deep dive, they explicitly state that human memory is inherently reconstructive.
That's the clinical term, yes.
But we always operate under this metaphor that memory is like a secure video file on a hard drive. Like you just click play and the file renders exactly as it was recorded.
Which is a terrible metaphor, honestly.
Right. So listening to the Berenstain history, I'm thinking, is human memory actually more like a Wikipedia page?
A Wikipedia page.
Yeah, like it's an open source document that your own brain and sometimes the culture around you can just go in and stealth edit without notifying your conscious mind.
The Wikipedia analogy is conceptually on the right track, but I would argue it's actually much messier and more destructive than that.
Really? Messier how?
Well, Wikipedia has a transparent version history. You can click a tab and see exactly who changed what and when. You can revert to the original text.
That's true.
Your brain does not keep a version history. When the neuropsychologists at the Cleveland Clinic talk about reconstructive memory, they mean that the memory literally does not exist in a fully assembled state when you aren't thinking about it.
Wait, it doesn't exist. What is in my head then?
When you try to recall the name of those bears, your brain isn't pulling a JPEG image of the book cover out of a folder.
Okay.
The memory is shattered across different neural pathways. The visual concept of a bear is stored in one area, the emotional warmth of childhood reading is in another, the auditory memory of the cartoon theme song is somewhere else.
So it's all in pieces.
Right. When you ask your brain for the memory, it has to rapidly gather all those fragments and reassemble them on the fly.
Just building it from scratch every time.
Exactly. And during that frantic reassembly process, if a piece is missing or ambiguous, the brain grabs the nearest, most logical substitute to fill the gap.
So it grabs the Stein suffix because it statistically belongs there.
Yes. It rebuilds the memory, hands it to your conscious mind, and says, here is exactly what happened.
It is a forgery factory. My brain is forging documents and passing them off as historical records.
And it does it seamlessly. That is the true terror of reconstructive memory. The forgery feels identical to the truth.
That concept sets up our next massive case study beautifully. because it is one thing for the brain's forgery department to swap out a single vowel in a surname because of linguistic probabilities.
Right, that's a minor edit.
Yeah, or adding a monocle to a cartoon character because 19th century capitalists usually wear them in political cartoons. Those are minor edits.
Really minor.
It is a completely different, almost incomprehensible level of cognitive glitch to fabricate an entire 90s feature film, complete with a plot, a star, and a VHS cover, when that film never actually existed.
Ah. We have arrived at the Sinbad Genie movie.
The holy grail of the Mandela Effect.
It really is.
If you were a child in the 1990s, there is a statistically high probability that you harbor a memory of a family comedy starring the stand-up comedian Sinbad.
And in this memory, he plays a bumbling, brightly dressed genie who grants wishes to a pair of kids.
Exactly. People swear they rented it at Blockbuster. They remember the purple text on the VHS box. They remember the flimsy premise.
The collective memory is that the movie was called Shazam.
But it was never filmed. Sinbad never played a genie in a movie. The film is a complete ghost.
Yet, if you dissect the timeline of how this shared hallucination was constructed, step by step, you can see the exact mechanics of how our collective Wikipedia page was rewritten.
It is a masterpiece of environmental conditioning.
It truly is. Let's walk through it.
Yeah, I want to walk through the Reddit timeline we sourced because a group of digital sleuths actually managed to map the genealogy of this false memory.
They did incredible work piecing this together.
They really did. So it breaks down into distinct phases. We start with the environmental setup, running roughly from 1991 to 1999.
Okay, the 90s.
Right. In 1991, a British television movie called Bernard and the Genie is broadcast. It introduces the modern comedic genie trope to a new generation.
Setting the foundation.
Then in 1992, Disney releases the animated juggernaut Aladdin. Robin Williams' performance absolutely saturates global culture, cementing the idea of a chaotic, fast-talking comedic genie.
You couldn't escape Aladdin in the 90s.
Impossible. Then, in 1996, the NBA superstar Shaquille O'Neal stars in a live-action family comedy called Kazam, where he plays a rapping genie who emerges from a boombox.
I definitely remember that one.
And finally, in 1999, another obscure family film called The Incredible Genie is released.
So the cultural waters of the 1990s are entirely saturated with this highly specific trope.
Totally saturated.
A child wandering the aisles of a video rental store is constantly absorbing the visual cues of neon-colored magic, baggy pants, and comedic actors granting wishes.
Right.
The cognitive schema for 90s Genie movie is firmly established in the collective unconscious.
Okay, so now we introduce the catalyst, the comedian Sinbad.
This is where it gets highly specific.
It does. His actual stage name, Sinbad, is already heavily loaded with linguistic and cultural associations to Middle Eastern folklore, magic, and genies.
Right, thanks to the classic Arabian Nights tales and the old Ray Harryhausen stop-motion movies like The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad.
Exactly. So before he even steps on screen, his name primes the brain for magic. But it gets so much more specific.
It does.
Yeah. In 1994, Sinbad hosted a movie marathon on the TNT television network. And for the interstitial hosting segments, he was dressed in an elaborate costume.
Oh no, let me guess.
Baggy silk pants, an embroidered vest, a turban, and a dangling earring. He was literally dressed as a genie.
He was also a ubiquitous presence in 90s children's entertainment,
He was everywhere.
making guest appearances on Nickelodeon shows like All That, often wearing similar, oversized, brightly colored 90s fashion that visually overlapped with the genie aesthetic.
And here's the piece of the puzzle that blew my mind. In 1996, right around the exact same time Shaq's genie movie Kazam is hitting theaters, Sinbad stars in a wave of his own live-action family comedies.
Movies like First Kid and Jingle All the Way.
Yes. And if your parents bought you the physical VHS tape for Sinbad's First Kid, guess what played in the unskippable preview trailers before the movie started?
The theatrical trailer for Shaquille O'Neal's Kazam.
Yes. You have the visual memory of Sinbad, the linguistic primer of his name, the established cultural schema of a magical genie, and the actual trailer for a genie movie physically existing on the exact same VHS tape in thousands of living rooms.
The ingredients are all just sitting there in the brain's mixing bowl.
Waiting to be baked into a false memory.
It is a perfect storm for a source monitoring failure. The brain has all these disconnected data points floating around the hippocampus.
But the movie still doesn't exist as a unified concept yet. We then enter what the Reddit timeline calls the rumor mill phase from roughly 2002 to 2015.
Okay, how does the rumors start?
In 2002, a random newspaper article briefly mentions that consumers are getting confused at the video store, mistakenly thinking the comedian Sinbad starred in Kazam instead of Shaq.
So it starts as a simple, logical actor mix-up. Two tall, bald, black entertainers starring in 90s family comedies.
Exactly. By 2009, this vague confusion makes its way onto platforms like Yahoo Answers. You can find archived threads of people asking, did Sinbad play a genie?
Just kind of testing the waters.
Right. People are debating it, but crucially, nobody has a title for this imaginary movie and nobody can remember the plot.
At this stage, it is just a floating feeling of misattribution. The brain knows Sinbad and genies are connected somehow, but it hasn't forged the final document yet.
The forgery is completed during the solidification phase, which kicks off in 2016.
What happened in 2016?
A Reddit user going by the handle Epic Journey writes a highly detailed, completely fabricated post outlining the full narrative plot of this non-existent Sinbad movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they claim the movie was called Shazam. They invent scenes about a broken boombox, two kids wishing for their single dad to fall in love, and Sinbad doing physical comedy.
And people bought it.
Almost immediately, thousands of people read this fabricated text and experienced a massive shock of recognition.
Unbelievable.
They flood the comments saying, yes, that is exactly the movie I rented. I remember that exact scene.
Good.
They seamlessly integrated a stranger's creative writing exercise into their own deeply held childhood memories.
What's fascinating here is that this is the ultimate clinical proof of how malleable memory is.
How so?
Well, the brain had a gap, a vague association between Sinbad and genies, and the moment an external source provided a structured narrative that fit the parameters, the brain enthusiastically adopted it to seal the gap.
The final nail in the coffin happened in 2017. The comedy website College Humor realized how big this internet myth had become.
Oh, I remember this video.
They actually shot a high-quality parody sketch of Shazam. They hired the real Sinbad.
They actually got him to do it.
They got him. They dressed him in a spectacular 90s genie outfit and had him act out the fake scenes. The video was clearly labeled as an April Fool's parody about the Mandela Effect.
But on the internet, context is the first thing to die.
Always. Because of the way information moves online, people didn't watch the whole video or read the context. They just saw screenshots of Sinbad in the outfit.
Or a 2-second GIF.
Right, a looping GIF on Twitter. And they used those decontextualized images as visual proof that the movie was real. They cemented a neurological false memory with a literal parody video.
When you look at the Shazam timeline from a neurological perspective, it perfectly illustrates a clinical concept known as confabulation.
Confabulation?
Yes. In neurology and clinical psychology, confabulation is often described as spontaneous, honest lying.
Honest lying. That's an oxymoron.
It is, but it makes sense biologically. The human brain fundamentally despises a vacuum. It hates unresolved narratives or disconnected data points.
It wants closure.
Right. When it encounters a hole in its memory, or when it tries to connect pieces of information that don't logically fit together, it doesn't just return an error message. It spontaneously generates a narrative bridge to connect them.
But the crucial distinction here is intent, right? The person confabulating isn't trying to deceive anyone. They aren't a con artist.
Not at all. They truly, deeply, viscerally believe the memory they are reciting. They experience all the physiological markers of truth.
So they aren't lying on purpose.
No. Now, we traditionally study severe confabulation in patients with profound neurological damage conditions like Alzheimer's disease or Korsakoff syndrome, which is severe memory loss often caused by alcohol abuse.
Okay, so extreme cases.
Yes. In those patients, the hippocampus, which forms new memories, and the prefrontal cortex, which fact-checks our thoughts, are severely compromised.
So what happened?
They lack the necessary chronological information to recall an event, so their brain spontaneously hallucinates details to compensate, sometimes inventing entirely fictional lives.
That's heartbreaking.
It is. But the terrifying and illuminating takeaway from the Mandela Effect is that mild confabulation is a feature of the healthy, everyday human brain.
Really? All of us do it.
Yes,
Yeah.
but we don't have the whole answer. Our reconstructive memory fills in what probably happened based on our internal biases, our schemas, and the cultural debris floating around us.
I'm trying to visualize this process. Are our brains essentially acting like modern predictive text algorithms?
Not even.
Like, I'm thinking about large language models. If I type 90s comedian baggy pants and magic into a prompt, the algorithm calculates the statistical proximity of those
Yeah.
words, and then it just autofills Sinbad Genie movie because it statistically makes sense within the training data, even if it has no tether to objective physical reality.
The predictive text analogy is conceptually brilliant, but the biological reality is actually much messier.
Okay, why is it messier?
Well, an algorithm is purely mathematical, right? It calculates word vectors. Human confabulation is deeply emotional and ego-driven.
Ego-driven.
Yes. Your brain isn't just autofilling text. It is actively constructing a reality that protects your sense of understanding the world.
So it's trying to keep me safe.
Exactly.
Mm.
It is optimizing for a narrative that makes you feel oriented and secure based on the data it has been fed. It is an autofill reality driven by a biological imperative to avoid confusion.
If my brain is operating in autofill reality to protect me from confusion, I need to know exactly how the machinery works.
Let's pop the hood.
Yeah, I don't just want to know what my brain is doing. I want to know how it is physically executing this forgery. Let's dive strictly into the cognitive science behind how the brain constructs these specific errors in a controlled environment.
To understand the actual mechanics, we have to look at how cognitive psychologists induce these glitches in a laboratory setting.
They induce them on purpose.
They do. And one of the most robust, widely replicated, and frankly unnerving methods is called the Diess-Roediger-McDermott task paradigm.
That's a mouthful.
It is, which is why it is universally referred to as the DRM paradigm.
Okay, the DRM paradigm, how do they weaponize this against a test subject?
The elegance of the DRM paradigm is really in its simplicity. A researcher will sit you down in a quiet room and have you read or listen to a list of highly related words.
Sounds innocent enough.
I will give you a classic example. The researcher reads a list like this: bed, rest, awake, tired, dream, wake, snooze, snooze, doze, slumber, snore, nap, peace, yawn, drowsy.
Okay, I'm already feeling tired just hearing that.
Right, so you process the list, and then the researcher distracts you for a few minutes. Maybe you do a math puzzle.
Sure.
Later, they ask you to recall the words.
That sounds like a standard memory test. A bit tedious, but pretty straightforward.
Here is where the glitch is engineered. The researcher will eventually ask you if you specifically remember a certain lure word being on the original list.
A lore word.
Yes. In this specific scenario, the lure word is sleep. Now look back at the list. Sleep was never spoken. It was conspicuously omitted.
Wait, you really didn't say sleep.
I didn't. But because every single word on that list is semantically anchored to the concept of sleep, the concept is intensely activated in your neural network.
Okay.
When participants are asked if sleep was on the list, a staggering 40 to 50% of them will confidently, absolutely falsely remember reading or hearing the word sleep.
Almost half the people.
Yes. They will swear on a Bible it was there.
Almost half the people just invent a memory out of thin air because the context implied it.
Yes. The cognitive model for this is called spreading activation.
Spreading activation.
When you hear the word bed, the node in your brain representing bed lights up. That electricity spreads to connected nodes tired, night, and critically sleep.
Like dominoes falling.
Exactly. By the time you've heard 15 words related to sleep, the sleep node in your brain is glowing as hot as if the word had actually been spoken out loud.
So the brain just gets confused.
The brain misinterprets that internal activation for an external memory.
Which brings us to the concepts of priming and schema consistency. I hear spreading activation, and I immediately think of priming.
It's very closely related.
If exposure to one stimulus directly alters my response to a subsequent stimulus, my brain is being hijacked.
Essentially, yes.
Like if I am talking about gardening and I say the word grass, your brain is neurologically primed. You will recognize the word tree or lawnmower milliseconds faster than you would recognize a completely unrelated word like telephone.
Because your brain is anticipating it.
Right. Your brain is preloading associated concepts into its RAM to save processing power.
Precisely. And this is why the Darth Vader quote is so universally butchered.
Oh, bringing it back to Star Wars.
Yes. Hearing Luke and hearing Father in the same sentence primes the brain to connect the characters in the most direct, archetypal way possible.
No, I am your father is just a negation. It is reactive.
Exactly. But Luke, I am your father, is declarative. It perfectly summarizes the emotional gist of the scene. The brain prefers the declarative gist over the clunky verbatim script.
And then you introduce schema consistency.
Yes, schemas are vital here.
A schema is the brain's ultimate cheat code. It is a mental blueprint or a standardized framework we use to organize our understanding of the world.
Like a template.
Exactly. Your schema for a kitchen includes a refrigerator, an oven, a sink, cabinets, and a toaster. You don't have to relearn what a kitchen is every time you enter a new house.
Because if we had to process every single object in a room as a unique, unprecedented discovery, our visual cortex would overheat.
We would be paralyzed by the data load.
Exactly. The brain is fiercely economical. It saves metabolic energy by relying on schemas.
That makes total sense.
Studies have demonstrated that if you show a participant a photograph of a kitchen that specifically does not contain a toaster, the toaster has been purposely removed, and you ask them later what was in the photograph, a significant portion will falsely remember seeing a toaster.
Because the schema demands a toaster. The blueprint says a toaster belongs there.
Yes. Just like the cultural schema for a wealthy turn-of-the-century, monopolistic capitalist absolutely demands a monocle.
The monopoly man feels naked without it to our schema.
Exactly. Just like the visual schema for a classical harvest festival demands a woven cornucopia to hold the pile of fruit on the Fruit of the Loon logo. The brain autofills the missing pieces of the blueprint.
But there is another mechanism working in tandem with the autofill, and it is what drives the more bizarre, highly specific visual glitches, like the Pikachu tail mystery.
Source monitoring errors.
Right. I was reading about source monitoring errors in medical literature. If I understand it correctly, a source monitoring error is a failure of the brain's tagging system.
That is an excellent way to describe it.
How does it work?
The source monitoring framework dictates how we attribute a memory to its original origin point. Your brain has to constantly ask itself a series of questions.
Like what?
Did I actually witness this event, or did someone just tell me a story about it? Did I read this in a reliable textbook, or did I see it in a sarcastic tweet? Did I actually do this, or did I just have a very vivid dream about doing it?
So, applying that to the Pokemon glitch, Pikachu does not have a black tail.
Right.
But if you dig deep into the decades-long lore of the Pokemon franchise, there is a pre-evolution baby version of Pikachu named Pichu.
Oh, yes.
And Pichu does have an all-black tail.
It does. And the visual dataset gets even more complicated than that.
Oh, really?
Yes. In the 2014 video game releases of Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, the developers introduced a special variant character known as Cosplay Pikachu.
Oh, okay, I remember that.
This specific female Pikachu has a prominent, distinct black heart shape stamped at the very tip of her tail.
So let's track the cognitive failure here. The brain sees thousands of images of Pichu with the black tail over the years. It sees promotional art for Cosplay Pikachu with the black tip. It sees the standard 1998 Pikachu with the brown base.
It absorbs all this visual data.
But it fails to securely attach the source tags to the files.
Exactly.
When I try to remember what Pikachu looks like, the brain dumps all those untagged files into a blender, merges them together, prioritizes the most striking visual contrast, bright yellow with a sharp black tip, and hands me a perfectly forged memory of a character design that never existed.
The sources blur, the schema of a black-tipped animal tail takes over, and the false memory is locked in as an absolute truth.
Now, I want to pause here and look directly at you, the listener, because up until this point, we've been talking about 90s comedians, cartoon mice, and spelling errors in children's books.
It's all very low stakes.
It is incredibly fun to analyze. It feels like a parlor trick or a quirky feature of internet culture. But the real-world implications of these cognitive mechanics are not funny.
Not at all.
The stakes are unimaginably high. Take everything we just discussed, confabulation, the DRM paradigm, spreading activation, schema consistency, and source monitoring errors, and walk those concepts into a criminal courtroom.
This is where it gets incredibly serious.
This is exactly why the justice system is currently grappling with the devastating reality that eyewitness testimony can be catastrophically unreliable.
It is arguably the most pressing issue in forensic psychology today. The legal system was built on the flawed assumption that memory is a video recording.
The medical sources highlight this vulnerability brilliantly. If a police officer or a prosecuting attorney utilizes priming techniques, either intentionally or accidentally, they can permanently alter a witness's memory without anyone in the room realizing a forgery has just been committed.
It happens all the time in interrogations.
Think about it. If a lawyer asks an open-ended question like, "Did you see anything on the kitchen counter?" The witness searches their reconstructive memory. It requires effort.
Right, it's a neutral prompt.
But if the lawyer asks a suggestive question like, "Did you see the red ball on the kitchen counter?" That seemingly minor phrasing change is a cognitive weapon.
The makes all the difference.
Using the definitive article "the" rather than "a" and describing a highly specific object acts as an intense neural prime. It forcefully suggests to the witness's brain that a red ball absolutely objectively existed in that space.
And because we know the brain abhors a vacuum, and because we know how the DRM paradigm forces the brain to invent lure words, the consequences are utterly predictable.
The brain just patches the hole.
Yes. If the witness's memory of the kitchen counter is even slightly degraded or fuzzy, their brain will likely seize the lawyer's suggestion to patch the hole. The witness might pause, their brain will run the spreading activation, and suddenly they will vividly remember seeing a red ball.
And they will testify under oath, risking perjury, that they saw a red ball that never existed simply because a person in a position of authority primed their schema.
They literally implant a false memory just by manipulating the syntax of a question.
It is terrifying how fragile our grip on objective reality really is when we rely solely on the biological hardware of our memory.
It is very fragile.
Which brings us to a crucial evolutionary pivot in our deep dive. It is one thing for an individual brain, sitting in an interrogation room or looking at a VHS tape, to glitch out and imagine a toaster or a red ball.
That is an isolated hardware failure.
But the Mandela effect is defined by its scale. How do these isolated glitches infect millions of people simultaneously? How does a false memory break containment and go viral across a culture?
To answer that, we have to move from neurology to sociology.
Okay, let's make that shift.
We have to look at the social contagion of memory. The research paper we pulled from Topics in Cognitive Science dives incredibly deep into the mechanisms of how falsehoods navigate through human groups.
And what's the core concept there?
The foundational concept of that entire field of study is known as memory conformity.
Memory conformity. So we are taking the concept of middle school peer pressure, but applying it to the fundamental construction of our reality.
In essence, yes. Memory conformity occurs when individuals actively incorporate misinformation into their own internal memories, simply because they receive that misinformation from a social source.
Because we are social animals.
Exactly. Human beings are apex social creatures. Our survival historically depended on shared information. But our brains do not treat all social sources as equal.
We filter them.
We run an instantaneous subconscious calculus to evaluate the credibility of the person speaking to us.
So our defense mechanisms are active, but they are biased. We are more likely to catch a logical error or a false memory if we inherently distrust the person delivering it.
Precisely. The data shows that people are significantly less likely to incorporate false information into their memories if it comes from someone they categorize as an outgroup member.
Like someone from a rival political party or a competing company or a different social class?
Yes. We also reject information more readily from children or older adults, presumably due to a subconscious bias regarding their cognitive reliability. When an outgroup member speaks, our prefrontal cortex activates its fact-checking filters.
But flip the variables. What happens then?
If the source of the false memory is a close friend, a romantic partner, a mentor, or simply someone who speaks with absolute unwavering confidence, we drastically lower our cognitive defenses.
We just trust them.
We do not rigorously fact-check our spouses or charismatic leaders. We assume their memory is accurate, and we just seamlessly adopt their narrative as our own.
That makes painful sense. If my best friend says, "Hey, remember when we went to that Italian restaurant and the waiter tripped and dropped the entire tray of wine glasses?"
Right.
I am probably going to say, "Oh yeah, I vaguely remember that crash," even if I was looking at my phone and saw nothing. I trust my friend's reality more than I trust the blank spot in my own memory.
Exactly. You adopt the memory to maintain social cohesion.
But the researchers in the Topics in Cognitive Science paper didn't just study who we trust. They designed an incredibly revealing experiment to study how the structure of our conversations dictates the truth.
And this is the core scientific insight of that paper, the collaborative memory paradigm.
This is a phenomenal piece of experimental design. I want to spend some time on this.
We definitely should. The researchers wanted to know what physically happens to the accuracy of memories when groups of people are forced to recall an event together.
So they separated participants into groups.
Yes, and forced them to use two drastically different methods of collaboration. They called them turn-taking environments versus free-for-all environments.
Okay, let's unpack the exact methodology of these environments because the implications are massive. What happens in a turn-taking scenario?
In the turn-taking method, the structure is rigid. Participants are required to sequentially recall information about a shared event.
Like going around a circle.
Yes. Person A must provide a memory, then person B must speak, then person C. The critical element is that there is high social pressure to produce an answer when it is your turn.
And the rules strictly limit any crosstalk, interruption, or debate.
Correct. No jumping in to correct anyone.
That sounds like a horribly stressful corporate boardroom meeting where the CEO is going around the table asking for updates and nobody's allowed to argue.
That is the exact psychological pressure cooker they engineered.
Yeah.
And the results reflect that stress.
What were the results?
In a turn-taking environment, the researchers observed a cognitive phenomenon called a retrieval criterion shift.
A retrieval criterion shift. What's that mean?
Because the social pressure to perform and recall information is so high and the fear of looking blank is so intense, individuals subconsciously lower their internal standards for what they will accept as truth.
Their brain says just give them something, anything, even if you aren't sure.
Exactly. They let their guard down. As a result, turn-taking environments produce a staggering volume of false memories and confabulations.
And because of the rules.
Because the rules of the environment limit interaction. When person A introduces a false memory, person B cannot interrupt to correct it.
The false information is just spoken into the room unchallenged, and it silently becomes part of the group's official collective record.
Exactly. Now contrast that with the free-for-all method.
Okay, how does that change the outcome?
The free-for-all environment is exactly what it sounds like. It is a natural, highly interactive, unstructured, and often chaotic discussion.
Just people talking like normal.
Yes, people are encouraged to talk over each other, interject, correct each other, and passionately debate the details.
And the cognitive outcome is entirely inverted, right?
Completely inverted. This chaotic environment facilitates a vital sociological and cognitive process called error pruning.
Error pruning. The metaphor is perfect. Like a gardener actively trimming dead and diseased branches off a tree to keep the whole organism healthy.
Exactly. In a free-for-all discussion, if someone introduces a false memory, if they say, the waiter dropped the wine glasses.
Then other group members have the immediate opportunity and the social permission to jump in.
Right. They can say, wait, no, that's not right. He dropped water glasses, and it was at a different restaurant entirely.
They actively challenge and reject the false information before it can take root in the collective narrative.
So ultimately, while it feels messier, the free-for-all method produces vastly more accurate, reliable collective memories. The friction of the debate is the shield that protects the truth.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. I want to take this concept of turn-taking versus free-for-all and map it onto the modern digital world.
Oh, this is a great application.
Look at the architecture of how we consume information today as a species. Are our social media feeds essentially a massive global turn-taking environment?
Think about the user experience.
Right. We scroll, we consume a 60-second video from a highly confident creator, we might share it, and then we swipe to the next one. The algorithm serves up an endless sequential line of individual broadcasts. We are isolated in our scrolling. The creator speaks, and we listen. Even if there are comments, they are often buried, curated, or siloed.
We are essentially sitting in a digital boardroom, sequentially absorbing claims without the ability to immediately interrupt the speaker.
Is the lack of robust, chaotic comment sections on some news sites, or the impenetrable echo chambers of algorithmically curated feeds, actually destroying our societal ability to error prune?
That is a profound and disturbing application of the science.
Is it accurate?
The cognitive research strongly validates your hypothesis. Online platforms that intentionally limit interaction or environments where users only broadcast to an audience without engaging in authentic, messy dialogue perfectly simulate the exact parameters of the turn-taking experiment.
So falsehoods and confabulations are introduced by confident, charismatic speakers.
And because there is no immediate free-for-all pushback to prune those errors in real time, the misinformation goes uncorrected.
It bypasses the source monitoring filters of millions of passive scrollers and is quietly, permanently adopted into the collective memory of the user base.
The platform architecture itself facilitates the Mandela effect on an industrial scale.
We are building global false memories because we engineered the friction of debate out of our daily
It
lives.
is absolutely chilling.
It really is. And it perfectly transitions us from these small group dynamics to the massive, sprawling networks we live in today, because the structure of a network doesn't just dictate what we believe, it dictates how aggressively and wildly those beliefs can mutate.
When cognitive scientists scale up to look at large populations, they rely on models called serial reproduction chains.
Serial reproduction chains.
The foundational study in this field was conducted by a British psychologist named Frederick Bartlett in 1932. It is essentially an academic version of the childhood game of telephone.
Person A tells a story to person B, who recalls it for person C, and so on, down a long chain of participants. I actually read about Bartlett's study. He didn't just use a simple sentence. He used a complex Native American folktale called The War of the Ghosts, right?
He did. He specifically chose that story because it was filled with cultural concepts, narrative structures, and supernatural elements that were completely foreign to his British test subjects.
And the results were a masterclass in schema consistency.
As the story moved down the serial reproduction chain, it didn't just lose details. The participants' brains actively rewrote the story to make it fit their own British cultural schemas.
They changed hunting seals into fishing. They removed the confusing supernatural elements.
They aggressively pruned the unfamiliar and auto-filled the culturally comfortable.
But the modern variations of Bartlett's experiment revealed something even more counterintuitive about the types of social networks we form today.
Yes. Modern researchers took Bartlett's concept and applied it to complex network structures. They compared how false memories evolve in two distinct types of networks: diverse networks and insular networks.
Okay, let's define those.
A diverse network is open and highly porous. You are interacting with many different people, some close friends, some weak ties, some strangers from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And an insular network. An insular network is a tight-knit, closed loop.
Yeah.
You are interacting with the exact same small group of like-minded people over and over again, constantly reinforcing each other.
Like a highly specific Reddit forum, a hyper-partisan political group chat, or an isolated online subculture.
Precisely. Now, the conventional wisdom might suggest that diverse networks are safer from false information.
But the study found otherwise.
Yes. The study found that diverse networks are actually incredibly efficient at spreading false information far and wide, simply because there are so many interconnected nodes for the information to travel through. The virus spreads fast.
However, the insular networks, those tight-knit echo chambers, did something far more dangerous cognitively.
Much more dangerous. They didn't just spread the error, they formed aggressively strong collective false memories.
Meaning they didn't just passively share the error, they weaponized it into a core belief.
Exactly. The individuals trapped in the insular networks exhibited vastly higher, almost fanatical confidence in the falsehoods.
Why are they so confident?
Because the false information was constantly bouncing around their closed loop, being repeated and validated by the same trusted peers over and over again, it completely overwhelmed their source monitoring filters.
The repetition created an illusion of consensus.
Yes. The error stopped being a mistake and became an unquestionable, foundational truth of the group's shared reality.
Which explains everything about modern internet subcultures. When a closed group of people continually validate a shared misconception, it solidifies into dogma.
And when that dogma is challenged by external, objective reality.
The cognitive dissonance is so catastrophic that the group has to invent an entirely new reality to justify the error.
Which brings us to the ultimate, grandest, most absurd theory of the Mandela Effect.
Oh, yes. The one that abandoned cognitive science entirely, throws neurology out the window, and goes straight into hard science fiction.
The parallel universe theory.
Yes. If you spend any time on the forums dedicated to this phenomenon, you will inevitably hit the bedrock of this community. There is a wildly popular, deeply entrenched theory that the Mandela Effect isn't a glitch in the human brain at all.
They argue it is literal, physical proof of the existence of parallel universes.
The proponents of this theory heavily lean on a pop culture, heavily bastardized interpretation of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. You know, a concept famously debated by physicists like Hugh Everett and Erwin Schrödinger.
And how do they apply quantum mechanics to a misspelled children's book? What is the proposed narrative here?
Okay, so the theory posits that for every possible outcome of a quantum event, the universe physically splits, creating a new branching timeline. They argue that human memory is flawless.
Flawless.
Right. They suggest that we didn't misremember the spelling of the Berenstain Bears. Instead, we originally lived in the Berenstain universe, where it was spelled with an E-I-N.
And then what happened?
Well, at some point in recent history, some theorists blame the activation of the CERN Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. Others blame cosmic quantum shifts. Our original timeline crashed into, or seamlessly merged with, a parallel Berenstain universe.
The timeline crashed.
Yes. Therefore, the people experiencing the Mandela effect aren't experiencing false memories. They are experiencing veridical, highly accurate memories of a destroyed timeline. They are interdimensional travelers trapped in the wrong universe.
It is a breathtakingly creative narrative. It is world building on a massive scale.
It is incredible science fiction, but as a psychological phenomenon, it is incredibly revealing. I have to look at this and ask you, isn't the parallel universe theory just the ultimate, most desperate ego defense mechanism ever constructed by the human mind?
That's a fascinating way to frame it.
Think about the psychological math here. Is it literally easier for the human ego to genuinely believe that the space-time continuum shattered, the foundational laws of physics collapsed, and we slipped through a multidimensional quantum rift, than to simply admit, hey, I spelled a cartoon bear's name wrong when I was a second grader?
When you connect this theory to the broader picture of human psychology, your observation hits the absolute core of the issue.
Does it?
Yes. Human beings possess a deep, biological, fundamental need for reality to make sense. We need the narrative to be coherent. But more importantly, we need to believe that our own minds are reliable instruments.
We have to trust ourselves.
Right. Admitting that our memory, the very faculty that constructs our identity, our history, and our relationships, is fundamentally flawed, easily manipulated, and constantly forging documents is deeply, existentially terrifying.
It threatens our core sense of self. It induces vertigo.
It is terrifying to realize you cannot trust the narrator in your own head.
Wow.
So when an individual is faced with undeniable physical evidence that a vivid, emotionally resonant memory is false, the cognitive dissonance is agonizing. The brain wants to reject the pain of that dissonance.
And the parallel universe theory offers an out.
Yes, the theory, while completely unsupported by actual quantum physics in this context, elegantly and instantly resolves that psychological pain. It offers a massive dose of cognitive relief.
It allows the individual to look at the evidence and say, I am not wrong. My memory is perfect. My brain is a flawless recording device. It is the entire universe that is wrong.
And when you combine that incredibly powerful seductive ego protection with the insular network dynamics we just discussed.
Right, the echo chambers.
When you log onto a forum and find 50,000 other people who are desperately validating your timeline to protect their own egos, alternate realities suddenly feel undeniably plausible. The collective validation of the echo chamber makes the impossible feel real.
My brain is perfect. The universe is wrong. That might be the most accurate summary of the modern human condition I have ever heard.
It really is a perfect encapsulation.
So, what does this all mean for you, the person listening right now? Let's synthesize the massive amount of ground we've covered today, because we have traveled from the video rental aisles of the 1990s, through the neurological mechanics of the DRM paradigm, all the way to the sociology of echo chambers and the philosophy of quantum mechanics.
The central inescapable takeaway from all the clinical data and the social science is that human memory is not a video recording. It is not an archive.
No.
It is an active, fragile, reconstructive process. Every single time you recall a memory, you are rebuilding it from scratch.
And during that rebuild, the memory is highly vulnerable to priming from your environment, confabulation to fill in the missing pieces, and massive social contagion from the voices around you.
And the practical application for you is to be acutely defensively aware of how you consume and verify the information that builds your reality.
Absolutely. Your best defense against the Mandela effect and against the broader threat of misinformation in our society is to actively seek out and engage in that free-for-all error pruning we talked about.
Do not passively accept information simply because a charismatic or confident speaker presented it on your feed. Do not accept a memory just because it perfectly aligns with your existing biases and schemas.
Embrace the cognitive friction. Discuss it, debate it, challenge the consensus, and independently research claims rather than relying on the fragile hard drive of your own mind. The friction of debate is the only thing that protects the truth.
Because your memory is an open source document. And if you aren't paying attention, someone else will write the edits.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. something we haven't touched on yet, but that builds on the terrifying reality of everything we've just learned.
I'm ready.
If our memories are not historical records, if they are constantly being overwritten by our environments, by suggestive priming, by our internal biases, and by the social contagion of the people we surround ourselves with, and if our very identities, our personalities, and our entire sense of self are built entirely on that shifting foundation of memories, then who are you really?
That is a deep question.
Are our personalities and our identities just a highly curated collection of successful Mandela effects? Are you an objective person, or are you just the sum of the stories your brain confabulated to make sense of the chaos?
That is a staggering, unsettling thought to end on. If the security camera is glitching, maybe the person watching the monitor is just an illusion too.
Something to mull over the next time you try to remember the exact spelling of your favorite childhood book. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.